In this webinar, we will see two common use cases of TrueSight Automation Console. Let's start with the first use case, TSAC Vulnerability Management. In this, we will be seeing importing a vulnerability scan file, asset mapping, vulnerability mapping, creating and executing remediation operation, and troubleshooting common issues. I will show a demo now. Prerequisites for auto mapping vulnerability in TSAC. When user import a scan file, following both condition needs to be fulfilled. Then the vulnerabilities get automatically mapped to its remediation content. Asset in the scan file are either automatically or manually mapped to endpoint in the endpoint manager, which is TSSA. Patch catalog should be imported into TSAC before importing scan file. If user import a patch catalog after importing the scan file in TSAC, vulnerabilities are not automatically mapped and user needs to click on auto map vulnerability button again to perform auto map of vulnerability. I have logged into TSAC console and added all the required catalogs and seeing status it is completed. Now we'll import a vulnerability scan file which I received from Nessus. In this demo, I will be using the Nessus vulnerability scan file. So let's click on manage, import, click import, select the vendor. I will select Nessus, select the scan file, select the operating system. So by default, it is selected all. Select the vulnerability severity. So I will select all. Click import. So the vulnerability scan file import process started. It may take a couple of seconds or a minute, depend on the scan file size. So the scan file is successfully imported. If I will click risk vulnerabilities, I can see all the vulnerabilities which came with the scan file which we imported. Let me filter with the status mapped. In this we can see vulnerabilities which are automatically got mapped when we imported the scan file. So this is the vulnerability name and CVID and the status and remediation content. We are seeing some vulnerabilities are partially mapped. The vulnerability showing partially mapped, that means the reported vulnerability is having multiple CVIDs in it, but the remediation content is available only for few CVIDs. So in this, user action is none. However, remediation operation can be created only for the mapped CVIDs with its appropriate remediation content. I have removed the mapped filter and now now there is no filter applied and we can see the unmapped vulnerabilities as well. We'll map this reported vulnerability and the CVID is this and status is unmapped. So we'll map this one with its remediation content. So click on action, click map remediation content, select the appropriate content type. So in this, I will select patch, then select the catalog from where you need to pick the bulletin or errata. So I will, since this is Red Hat, so I will pick up Red Hat catalog and the errata which belongs to this CVID. In the define target scope, user can specify the target OS group. In this example, I will just select the all targets, click add, save. Now this reported vulnerability got mapped. So we'll perform the remediation operation for mapped and auto mapped vulnerability. I will pick up this vulnerability we just mapped. So let's copy the CVID, click on operations, add operations, provide the name, select vulnerability selection. I will just paste the CVID which I copied. I can see this many targets are impacted. So I will just execute remediation operation for all the targets. Click on next. It is showing operation type and asset total 38 and the configuration. So I will select do not restart. Select the appropriate option. If you have change automation configure, you can set a schedule. I will select I will do later. The notification, if you would like to receive the job notification, user can enable it. Let's click on save. Our job is created and it's waiting for the execution. So since I selected that I will do later, you need to click on action and you need to execute it. Then only it will get executed. So here it is execute now, which will execute the job. We'll see now common issues user might get while performing vulnerability management use cases in TrueSight Automation Console. So here I have this vulnerability. Let me search it one more time and I can see it is unmapped. So the first thing we need to check whether the remediation content for this reported CVE is present in TSSA or not. I will log into TSSA on which it is connected. So that vulnerability was reported for Windows 2016 server. So I will just open that Windows 2016 catalog. I will create one smart group and we can see the remediation patch is present in our catalog. So for this, as we discussed, the prerequisite is that catalog should be added into the TSAC and it should be synced. And we can see over here, I have catalog already added. Let's find that CVID one more time. This is the impacted asset. And see this one, it is not mapped. So for vulnerability to get auto mapped, the impacted asset should be mapped into the TSAC. So whenever user imports a vulnerability scan file, it's automatically mapped with the manage asset. Since this is not mapped, so I will map it manually. So we have it is mapped now. Let me go back to the risk vulnerabilities. Let me find our CVID. It is unmapped. Let me execute map now. So we got the bulletin ID now and the remediation as well. This is the required things for auto mapping. In TrueSight Automation Console version 21.3 and above, we have introduced mapping multiple patches to remediate vulnerabilities. If a patch catalog imported in Automation Console includes multiple patches that are required to remediate a vulnerability, all these patches are auto-mapped with the vulnerability. To remediate the vulnerability, user can deploy all the patches to the targets in a single remediation operation. Also, user can select multiple patches from the same catalog while manually mapping the remediation content with the vulnerability. This feature is currently supported only for the TrueSight server automation. Let's move to the next common issue. So how to troubleshoot the vulnerability remediation operation? For example, this is the CVID. For this, I will create the job. So I will create a remediation operation for this vulnerability. So let's execute now. So if my this vulnerability remediation operation fails, so how to troubleshoot? So this is the same method which we are using in TSSA. We need to go to TSSA and find the job with this name and then check the deploy logs, why it is and where it is failed. So the troubleshooting regarding the remediation operation, it is same which we do in the TSSA patching stuff. That concludes my demo. So let's start with our next use case, TSAC patch management. In this, we will be seeing importing a TrueSight server automation patch catalog in TSAC, create a patch policy, creating and executing remediation operation, troubleshoot common issues. I will show a demo now. To add a catalog in TrueSight Automation Console, navigate to Administration, click Add Catalog, select Catalog, select the schedule, so catalog would get automatically updated in TrueSight Server Automation. So I will select Weekly, save. We can see our catalog is added successfully. When user is adding a catalog first time in TSAC, it might take a couple of minutes to complete the sync. So now we'll create the patch policy job. Navigate to manage, click add policy, provide the name, select the catalog, select the patch policy option. So I will select hotfix and bulletins. Select the asset group. So I will select Windows 2019. Select the policy schedule. So in this example, I will select monthly. Click save. Our patch policy is created. We can see the patch policy name, asset scope on which this policy will be executed. And the last run, there is no last run since we haven't executed this patch policy, and status is enabled. Click on action and we can see multiple options. So let's execute now. We can see our patch policy is running. We can see the patch policy has been completed successfully and we are seeing missing patches as well. So now let's create a remediation operation by using this patch policy. So navigate to operation, click add operation, provide name, click next, select the patch policy, select the associated assets, select the remediation options, select the maintenance schedule. I will select execute now, click next and save. We can see the job is created and it's running. So this is the way to create a patch policy job and remediation operation in TSAC. Let's see the troubleshooting common issues in patch management use cases. So to troubleshoot the issues around the catalog adding or sync failing, so let's navigate to the documentation. So in the documentation troubleshooting section, working with logs. So in this, we will come to know what service is getting used for particular activities. Like for example, we are adding the catalog. So there is service called catalog service, which is performing the catalog adding related activities. So we'll see the catalog service logs. So this is the log file name and this is the location name. So if sync fails or if any issue while adding the catalog into TSAC, we'll see the same or leading errors in this file, and according to that we can take our troubleshooting ahead. So we'll check the issues around patch policies from TSAC. So when executed patch policy, user is not seeing any result inside it when he clicked the patch policy. This is because app server failed to respond to REST notification of job to the TSAC server. To resolve this issue, user needs to check whether the TSS app server is communicating to TSAC server over the port 10443 or not. If it is not, then user needs to enable the communication between these two servers. For the patch policies issues, user can also validate the policy service log along with the TSS's app server log to take the troubleshooting ahead. A REST troubleshooting for the patch policy, it is same like we are doing troubleshooting in the TSSA for patch analysis job. So since TSAC it is just front end and this job will be getting executed at the TSSA side. So whatever troubleshooting user needs to perform, that needs to be carried over the TSSA server. To troubleshoot the operations related issues in the TSAC, user can refer the policy underscore service log like we did for the patch policy. So along with this file in the TSSA endpoint manager, remediation job and analysis job will be created. And if the job is failing, then user can review the analysis job followed by a remediations deploy log to narrow down the issue further. So from TSAC, we can export the vulnerability report, compliance report, and missing patches report. Since we are discussing about the patching use cases in TSAC, so we'll export the missing patches details. So on this screen, we can see the missing patches information and the impacted assets. If you will click on this, you will get all the 15 impacted assets and the patch age and the severity of the patch and the classifications. So to export it, click on the export, select the open missing patches. Open missing patches, that means those patches are yet to install on the server. Closed missing patches, that means user has executed the remediation operation by selecting the patch policies and those patches are successfully installed on servers. So I will select the both the options. Let's export it. So here it is completed. So let me open the export. So here we can see the missing patch name and the missing patch asset ID and impacted asset name. So we will get the server names over here, impacted asset ID and the severity of the patch and status. So we can see all the missing patches are in waiting attention. That means if user will execute the remediation operation, it will go into closed section from the awaiting attention. This is the way to export the missing patches details from TSAC. That concludes my demo. Thank you. Please refer to the TrueSight Automation Console documentation for troubleshooting guides. Here is the information how to contact BMC. Thank you.